I'd like to talk a little bit today about expedited development pathways. Both the US FDA and the EMA have different initiatives which will help sponsors to develop products for novel, life-threatening indications and also for indications where there aren't any good therapy. In the U.S., we have a number of those initiatives. The most recent one is one called Initial Targeted Engagement for Regulatory Advice. This is a fairly new initiative, and this is actually what I'll call a pre-IND interaction with FDA. When a sponsor has a complicated product or a complicated program and has just a few important questions that they'd like feedback from FDA on, usually in one or two disciplines. This is an easy way to get early advice. That's a fairly new initiative, but one that I think we'll be seeing more of. In addition to that, of course, we have our formal meetings with FDA, your pre-IND, end of phase 1, end of phase 2, pre-NDA meeting. There's also different designations that one can get that may help with getting more input from FDA and may also help with streamlining development. The two that are most used are Fast Track and Breakthrough. Both of those are initiatives by FDA to help sponsors with the expedited development of products that are going to be a significant clinical benefit. The Fast Track program has been around probably longer than the Breakthrough program, and there are similarities and differences between the two. Fast Track can be applied anytime at IND submission or after IND submission up to marketing application submission. And basically what one needs to show in a Fast Track submission is that the therapeutic has the potential to be a significant advancement in the therapy of the disease in question. That can be based on preclinical data, clinical data, or both. At this point in time, FDA prefers that the sponsor have clinical data, but Fast Track designation has been accepted based on preclinical data only. Fast Track designation allows sponsors to have more frequent meetings with FDA on their program to get earlier advice, not to wait for an end of phase 2 meeting, but potentially have an end of phase 1 meeting. It also makes them eligible for a priority review and a rolling submission. One step up from Fast Track is Breakthrough. Now, Breakthrough designation means that clinical data has been generated to show that the therapeutic has the potential to treat the disease that we're looking at. How much clinical data that's needed for that is really up to FDA. What I can tell you is first-time submissions of breakthrough therapy don't always get approved by FDA. Sometimes there's not enough data. But once breakthrough therapy designation has been obtained, basically, again, the sponsor is allowed more interactions with FDA. FDA really wants to partner with the program to move the product through development and to approval. So basically, Breakthrough gives you opportunities for more interactions than Fast Track. Breakthrough, as well as Fast Track, gives you the opportunity for a priority review and a rolling submission. Now I think I'd like to transition and talk about priority review. The review cycle for an NDA or a BLA in the U.S. is 10 months. Within 10 months of submission, FDA will let the sponsor know whether it's approved or whether it's not approved if there's deficiencies that need to be answered. With priority review, that 10 months goes to 6 months. That shortens the review cycle significantly. FDA tries to get these priority reviews done in one cycle, which means that the sponsor needs to be at the ready. And as the regulatory oversight of a program, I always try to make sure that everyone is ready when a question from FDA comes, because they expect that answer in 24 to 48 hours. They don't have time for you to do an experiment. They can't wait till you come back from vacation. the people need to be at the ready to answer those things. Otherwise, it really doesn't work. The other option that we have with these fast track and breakthrough program is the option of a rolling submission. And that's very nice because if one section, let's say your non-clinical or your CMC, is ready while you're doing your final analysis of your pivotal study, those can be submitted and the reviews can be started. But we always have to keep in mind that even if there is a rolling submission, the start of the review clock is the date of the last piece, not the first piece. And the last FDA initiative I'd like to talk about is accelerated approval. And that really is geared towards serious and life-threatening illnesses where there is no available therapy, where you have a product that has the potential to be a therapeutic advantage, and many times it's based on a surrogate endpoint. I think the most commonly known are when you have single-arm studies in oncology based on response and duration of response. With accelerated approval, there is a requirement that the therapeutic endpoint be confirmed in a confirmatory study. It used to be you got accelerated approval and then you got to do your confirmatory study later. Now FDA is being much more strict. They'd like to see that study ongoing, and they'd like to see it actually near completion by the time they grant accelerated approval, because then they know that the results are going to come in and they're going to be able to either confirm clinical benefit and move the approval to full approval, or they're going to be able to take steps to remove the product from the market. So I think those are very, very important pieces to keep in mind as we move through our development cycle. And we at PROMETRIKA are geared towards helping our clients decide which programs make sense for them and at what point in time it makes sense to request these initiatives. In Europe, there are similar programs. They have different names, and they're slightly different. And I think the first one I'd like to talk about is the PRIME initiative. And the PRIME initiative is really a combination of our fast track, breakthrough, priority review, and rolling submission, kind of all into one. Basically, what PRIME does is, again, it's for something it's a therapeutic advantage in an area that could be serious and life-threatening. There aren't other therapies. And what it is it's a way for a sponsor to work with EMA and the regulators in moving that product through. What there is there's a chance for more opportunities for scientific advice. The rapporteur and the co-rapporteur, which are the people that are responsible for the review of a marketing application, are identified earlier so they can work with the sponsor as they're putting together their application, not just after the application has been received. And it's a way to really try to expedite the development of new novel therapies in the EU. On the approval side, there are actually two ways that one can get something that's similar to the U.S. accelerated approval, but not quite. The mechanism that is most similar to accelerated approval is conditional approval. That is basically a approval based on a surrogate endpoint, and there is a need to confirm studies, so it's very similar to the accelerated approval in the U.S. There's another mechanism called exceptional circumstances, which is where you do a study that may not be a study that's considered a pivotal study for full approval, but because of the results, it would be impossible to do a second study in that particular indication, and therefore it could be approval under exceptional circumstances. EMA also does have an accelerated assessment process. The process in Europe is a little bit different in the US in that you submit, you get a list of questions, you have a period of time to respond to the list of questions, and then the rapporteur and co-rapporteur make their decisions. And they basically make a recommendation, and then the CHMP would be the one that would ratify that recommendation. In the accelerated assessment, both the time that the reviewers have gets cut, but the time that the sponsor has to actually respond to the list of questions also gets cut. So again, similar to what we were talking about with priority reviews, sponsors have to be at the ready to respond to questions. One has to know where the holes in the submission are and has to be able to really, again, in an expedited fashion respond, because if one can't, then, there is the option that AMA could say, no, we're going back to a regular review cycle. So I think we've made a lot of advances. We've got a lot of initiatives on both sides of the pond to help sponsors bring new novel medicines to people that need them. And I think as a regulatory advisor at PROMETRIKA, I think we are really geared to help our clients figuring out which of these mechanisms is best for them and when is the time to apply for them.